wait for Susie to get back. I'm going to just start with singing Hine Mato. Actually, I'm going to wait for Susie because I think she's going to be helping lead it. So I'm just going to talk amongst myself here. Hi, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Trish Monroe. I'm one of the lay leaders for this evening. I'm going to be leading with Susie Maska, who is our Religious Practices Chair. And will be joining us along with her ukulele? I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry at all. So, and here she is, and we're going to get started with Hine Matov. So, you want to take your mask off too?
You have to keep reminding me. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, hine matov, la 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 la. Hine matov, hine matov, la 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 la. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Okay, and actually, I will be lighting the Shabbat candles here. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai.
Hang on 1 second. I need to actually light them. 1 more second. Now.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshonu u'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehad lifner shel Shabbat.
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us, who makes us holy with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. And we now have a moment for those good things that have happened during the week. And I think this is a week that really could use a few good things. So if you've got something good, now's the time to say it. Somebody? Nothing? Well, I'll go. My mother's coming out tomorrow, and she's COVID-free, and the rest of us are COVID-free. And that's actually right now as good as it gets. Anyone else? Go for it. Wonderful. So remind me of your name? Hunter. Hunter raised money for his local hockey club and for those who could not afford to play, and so he's enabled more players on the team. Way to go. Thank you. All right. Jason. Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. Hi, Claire. Oh, I know what that is. She played the asset game in Livermore. She went around and she checked out all the buildings and all the other things in Livermore that are, just getting a list of all the stuff the city owns. I could talk about this for a while, but probably we should move on. All right. As a substitute of sorts for Lecha Dodi, I chose a poem by Zelda, who's a poet from Ukraine, lived in Israel, first half of the 20th century. Light a candle, drink wine. Softly the Shabbat has plucked the sinking sun. Slowly Shabbat descends, the rose of heaven in her hand. How can Shabbat plant a huge and shining flower in a blind and narrow heart? How can Shabbat plant the bud of angels in a heart of raving flesh? Can the rose of immortality grow in a generation enslaved to destruction, a generation enslaved to death? Light a candle, drink wine. Slowly Shabbat descends, and in her hand the flower, and in her hand the sinking sun. Welcome, Shabbat.
I'm pretty sure no one here is in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. Am I correct? Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right, page 26. Yet gadol v'yet gadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'amal divrach irutei, v'yamlich malchutei,
B'chai echon u'vyom echon, u'v'chayetecho Beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, u'vizman kariv.
Vehimeru,
Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, la'olam u'l'olmei almaya, yitbarach.
Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei dekudashah,
Barichu,
le'el mimko birchata v'shirata,
tushbechata v'nechemata, dahamiran b'alma.
Ve'meru,
Amen.
Please turn to
Please
page 20.
rise and turn to page 28. Yes.
Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamelech Orah. Baruch
I'm just realizing when we turn around, I don't have a mic. I'm hoping people can hear. I'm really sorry about that. Please be seated. On page 30 at the bottom in the English I'll be reading. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opening the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are the creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from night, transforming day into night, and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. And continue on page 32.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amelcha Hatafta, Amcha Hatafta, Torah u'mitzvah, Chukim umishpatim, otanu lemadata, otanu lemadata. Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbenu, ufkumenu b'sachyak b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'or yameinu, V'avtatan v'tasir mimenu l'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael, ohev amo Yisrael.
And we continue on the next page with Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, B'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol ma'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shiftecha b'veitecha, uv'lechtecha b'derech, uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha, u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'einecha, u'ktavtam amezuzot beitecha, uv'isharecha, Leman tizkeru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'tem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Continuing on page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, and that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, and that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands together. And on page 40, we continue with Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, o sefele, o sefele. On page let me see, where did I put that? Page 43. I actually wanted to do a little bit of an introduction to this. This is a Hashkivenu, and it's the prayer we say in the evenings. It's the added-in prayer. Right in mornings, there's only two following the Shema. Only one following the Shema. In the evening, there's two following Shema before we get to the Amidah. And the reason for that is because we add this Hashkivenu. This is the added prayer, and it's a prayer about wishing for that we lie down in peace, we come up to life renewed. And when I read that, whether in Hebrew or English, I think about what it means
in a time where there's no electricity, where there's no lights, how it feels to be in the dark and to feel like life is fragile, which it feels a lot of the time these days anyway. This prayer speaks to that darkness that is, once the lights are out, they're out. So I'm going to read the interpretation at the bottom of page 43. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are the true protection and safety, and in you, at your presence, are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. And
Page 44.
with Vishamru.
Vishamru
b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם.
ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם.
And before we rise for the Amidah, I'm wondering, can you hear either of us when we turn toward the ark? They can't. Okay, so I'm going to, pardon? Okay, so I think one of us will actually turn towards the ark and the other will stay here so that you can actually, y'all can actually hear us. Y'all. Wherever. Susie, you're leading. Why don't you go ahead and
Sure.
you turn and I'll stay right here. Please rise. Adonai, sifatai tifta, ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zoker Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Ge'ula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shmo v'Ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ezrat Sarah. Ata Gibor L'Olam Adonai, Mechayem et Imat Harav Lehoshia. Mafi Mechol Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayem etim B'Rachamim Rabim. Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim, Umatir Asurim. Umekayem emunato l'shenei afar, micha mocha bal gevurot, umido melech memit umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'nemanata l'chayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayet hametim. Atah kadosh v'shim hakadosh, v'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelu ha'selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayet hakadosh. You may be seated. And we'll continue on page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who, you can join me with this if you'd like. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, B'kadesh HaShabbat. And on page 57, Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'ot ha-levad ha-ba'ira na'avod. I gotta say, my eyes are not what they used to be.
That's okay. I just realized I think my hearing aid was off, so we're good there.
We're at that age. On page 59, God of, at the top, God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulacha na'el l'chodot. And we continue on page, actually, let's do silent prayer and then close with Shalom Rav. So take a moment, use the words on the page or your thoughts in your heart to talk to God for a moment, or whomever or whatever you feel the need.
Got something for me?
Anytime you want to start. I'm so grateful for a community that takes care of its elders.
Okay, Shalom Rav.
Okay, sure.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tesim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tesim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adam lecha shalom. Ki atahu melech Adam lecha shalom.
this time, we ask for healing for members of our congregation and their loved ones who are ill. If you are praying for the healing of body or the healing of spirit for a loved one, I invite you to recite that person's name out loud as my eyes pass yours, and we'll do it in the sanctuary and then on Zoom. And we'll continue, we'll begin on this side and continue. So Bill Moran, Kendall Miles, Barbara Keir, and then those who are grieving in deep pain over the last 2 weeks. Wait, do I do this one? Jason. I'm not sure how do I do this. Could you please unmute yourselves, and then we can hear what you have, the names you'd like to add to the Misha Barak list. Okay, all right. To those whose names we've said out loud, we add those whom we hold in our hearts, and we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholin. We praise you, God, the source of healing. Amen. And we continue actually with the Misha Barak on page 253, which I can now see.
Misha Barak Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Barak Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
All right, well, it's now time for me to talk. This week, we begin the book of Bamidbar, and it means in the wilderness. It's an apt title for what follows. The people of Israel wandering for a generation through the wilderness before reaching Israel. The connection between the travails of the people of Israel with all their fears and complaints and mistakes and the immigrants of today is not lost on me. As we enter this book, it coincides with my grandfather's yahrzeit this week, and I'm contemplating what it means to leave familiarity, however awful, for the unknown, and what the consequences are for that person and future generations. So I'm going to talk about my grandfather, and hopefully I'm going to bring it back to Bamidbar by the end of this. Otherwise, you just get a story about my grandfather. By the way, this necklace I've chosen to wear was what he gave my grandmother on their wedding. See, I'm not sure I'm going to make it through, but we're going to try. She gave it to me when I got married, and that was almost 42 years ago. My grandfather, Herman Davis, of blessed memory, was born in 1910 in Russia, although it was the Pale and actually Ukraine. His father had left for the U.S. when he was small to avoid brutal Russian army service. 7 years, several pogroms, and one World War later, his mother, my great-grandmother, shepherded the family through a year-long journey to join her husband. They arrived in the U.S. shortly before the immigration fears of the 1920s slammed the gates shut. My memories of my grandfather are of a lean, handsome man with a thick gray hair and a beard. I'm telling you, I'm not sure I'm going to make it. He was deeply Jewish in feeling, although not at all spiritual. Our family history of ADHD traces back at least to him. It did not make him well suited for school, although a smarter, more thoughtful man would be hard to find. But that was later. As a child in Ukraine, his father was already gone. He lived with the fear of pogroms and the reality of witnessing his own grandfather's murder at the hands of the Cossacks. The journey to the U.S. was fraught with border crossings, untrustworthy guides, and long unplanned stays in Poland. When he and his family reached the U.S., he was detained to watch his sister while she was ill. When his father, who had last seen him as a small child, laid eyes on the emerging young man, he was not impressed, and the pain of his father's rejection lasted my grandfather's whole life. My Grandma Ruth was his great love. Their marriage was the romance to which we all aspired, and from her love for him came healing. They made a life for their 3 children in Los Angeles. It became their home and their land, their Israel, in a way. They owned a bar in the Watts area, a bar that made a community hub, so much so that when the Watts riots happened, community members stood guard to protect them and their space. My grandfather watched Jeopardy, cracked sunflower seeds by the bowl, played cribbage like a fiend, and loved his family with all his heart. He saw his daughters marry, some of their children marry, and was at one great-granddaughter's bat mitzvah. And yet, while he was the strength and rock of his family, the traumas of his youth played out as well. This past fall, right around his birthday, Disney released Encanto, a movie that captures the immigrant's journey through the generations. It's really hard to watch that movie without crying. In fact, if you can, I have to talk to you. As I watched it, I thought of my own family's journey through those generations and beyond. My grandfather never felt good enough. He never felt fully safe in the world. And those feelings had consequences as well. The traumas of one generation play out into the future, but they can be healed from generation to generation as well. And that is what I've seen in my own family as we've gone from generation to generation. The healing that my grandparents took as their children were successful, and that I've seen my parents and my parents and my aunts take as their children, and up to my own children and their children, are healing. So how does it relate to our parsha? Most immigrants do not literally wander for 40 years before finding home. And yet, whether physically or emotionally, when people are forced from their homes in one way or another, they enter Hamidbar, the wilderness, with all the fear and the chaos that implies. And those who make it through are changed. So are their children and their children's children. As a people, we were changed back then, and we continue to be changed as we wander, as we keep our suitcases packed a little bit. So now, how do we, so many generations later, here and now, take that immigrant experience and our own into our time? How do we help heal ourselves? How do we help heal the world? And that is what I have to say for this evening. Shabbat Shalom. I would like, I believe, to ask, shuffling papers, Sarah Duringer, our chair of social action, very appropriate this evening, to come forward for announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's nice to see you all, and nice to see you all on Zoom. The Oneg this evening is sponsored by Trish in memory of her grandfather, Herman Davis, and thank you so much for sharing those stories about him. Tomorrow's Torah study is online via Zoom at 9 a.m. And I want to thank Trish and Susie for leading us tonight. Just a couple of announcements. You can find a lot more in the Once Around, but the Backpack Project, which helps supply school supplies for families in need, is going on now through June 8th, and we currently are 1/3 of our way to the goal, so check out on the Once Around how to donate there. And the High Holy Day Choir, if you're a singer, is looking for folks to join, and rehearsals start mid-August, so please feel free to check out this and more in the Once Around. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So So we are in that period of time between Passover and Shavuot, where we count the Omer. Omer is a measure, and it harkens back to the agricultural roots of Passover and Shavuot. It tells us when, oh golly, I should have looked this up beforehand. The wheat or the barley is going to be ready. I think it's
Peter knows.
barley. Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to count the Omer for everyone. This is, behold, I am prepared and ready to perform the mitzvah of counting the Omer as it is written in Torah. You are to count from the end of the rest day. From the day you brought the waved Omer offering, it shall be 7 complete weeks. Until the end of the 7th week, you shall count 50 days. 7 weeks. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. And we are at the 42nd day of the Omer, which is Hayom Shnaim v'Arba'im Yom Shehem Shisha Shvuot LeOmer. Today is 42 days, which are 6 weeks of the Omer. And with that, we turn to Aleinu number 2 on page 282, and please rise. You'll do that, and I'll do this, and we'll be good. L'shabeach Adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'navnu korin, u'mishpachavim u'bodim, livnei melech, malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shehunat hashamayim v'yosed haaretz, u'moshav yikara b'shamayim imah, u'shchina tuzo, u'shchina tuzo, v'gov ha'eromi, hu Eloheinu emet molkeinu, efesu latov, kakatuv b'torato, v'yadata hayom, v'yoshata hayom, v'hashevota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim mimah, ya'aretz v'ya'aretz mitachat einot, v'nemar v'chaya Adonai, v'melech kol ha'aretz, bayom ha'hu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. You may be seated. I'm going to be reading from page 291, number 7. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. Judaism teaches us the sacred duty of memory. On this Shabbat, we remember those members of our congregation and their loved ones who have died within the past 30 days. If you are observing Shloshim, I invite you to rise as I recite the name of your loved one. And actually, I don't have that on the yahrzeit list. So if there is anyone here or on Zoom who is within that past 30 days, please tell me and I will read it. I will repeat it. Okay. And on this Shabbat, we remember those whose Yortzeit occurred during this past week. I invite those who are observing Yortzeit for the following to rise as I recite their names. Herman Davis, that would be me, I'm up. Baronia Auerbach, Lester Berg, Eva Epstein, Hannah Fischer-Rung, Felicia Ann Gaston, Julius Gordon, Arthur Holtz, James Key, Rena Lepsinger, Ralph Munowich, Werner Weinstein, Vincent Williams, and that's the list. Hold on. To those names which we have said out loud, we add those whom we hold in our hearts, and I would add to those all those who died this past week in the murders that took place in Texas, and say, Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. We praise you, God, O source of healing. And let us say amen. And let's see. Oh, all right. At this point, I'm going to invite everyone to rise. Wait, what did... I think I just screwed up. I'm sorry. I read the wrong thing. Totally spaced out. Please rise as we recite Kaddish. We rise as one congregation, united by memory and compassion to praise God's name. Yikadah v'yikadash shmei rabbah, ba'amad divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chai echon u'vyom echon, uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach la'alam umei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithalev v'yithalal, shmei dekudashah b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran ve'alma ve'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imrumav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. May their memories, zikronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. You may be seated. And I apologize for not having put the sheet away where it belonged. We are going to conclude with Adon Olam on page 321.
Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'en Nasa B'chetzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nivra Azai Melech Shemo Nivra Ve'acharei Kechlot HaKol Le'vado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Hava Ve'hu Hover Ve'hu Yiryeh V'tifara Ve'hu Yiryeh V'tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'ein Sheni L'cham Shelo L'hachmira V'li Reshit V'li Tachlit V'lo Ha'oz V'hamizrach V'lo Ha'oz V'hamizrach V'hu Eli V'hagoali V'tzur Chemli V'etzara V'hu Nisi Umanos Li Minat Kosi B'yom Ekra Minat Kosi B'yom Ekra B'yado Akid Ruchi B'eit Ishan B'ha'ira B'im Ruchi Gviati Adonai li V'lo ira Adonai li V'lo ira.
And now if you'll please join me for Motzi and Kiddush. Remember that wine that we talked about at the beginning of the service? It's finally here. So here's how it's going to go. I'm going to say the wine, I'm going to do hamotzi, and then Sarah's going to whisk the challah away to chop it into pieces. But here it is. There we go. But first, shh, I'm not doing anything yet. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho ba'ava uvratzon hinhilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom tehillah lemikrai kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'charta, v'otanu kidashta, Mikomim, v'shabbat kodshecha, ba'ahava uvratzon, hinhaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. L'chaim. Oh, my goodness, that's interesting. So at Friday nights, when I do that with my grandkids, they get to hold the cup, and we can sort of go up and up and up and up until it's like this at the very end. Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon. And I hope that those of you on Zoom have something to join in oneg with. Hang on 1 second, and we'll have wine and grape juice for everybody